You ever smoke dope?
And didn't inhale and never tried it again.
Well, you're never going to like it if you don't inhale. That's just a mouthful of smoke.
It's better to cough. It's like, makes you 10 times more higher.
The issue of which politicians have or have not smoked mull may soon be in the headlines after 2 state MPs revealed their plan to legalise cannabis in WA.
How high are you?
Hi, how are you?
The imaginatively named Legalise Cannabis WA party counts Brian Walker and Sophia Melmond as representatives in the upper house. Brian and Sophia want West Australian adults to be able to possess 50 grams of dried cannabis or 150 grams of fresh herb. That'll mean nothing to anyone because nobody buys green in grams. It means you can have nearly 2 ounces of this or up to 5 ounces of this. Oh, and each person can also have up to 2 plants, up to a maximum of 4 plants per household.
I see those. It's definitely the highest grade hydroponics in the city. Would you go to weed college? Damn.
The ceiling on total plants being there so a big household can't do this. The Legalise Cannabis WA party also wants local governments to issue licences to businesses which are able to sell cannabis products.
You mean bongs?
Yes. Smoking implements, as the constabulary calls them. But the intention is to eventually have mull cafes like they have in Amsterdam. The Legalise Cannabis Party's legislative agenda is based on something called the grape theory, which implores people to think about cannabis the way you'd think about wine production and consumption.
What do you think? Legalisation is a good idea?
Doesn't matter what I think, because this legislation is never going to be passed by Parliament and will therefore never become a law. It's a private member's bill. It's introduced by someone who is not a member of the governing party. These bills rarely get passed because the topic's usually something the governing party isn't interested in, because the governing party has a majority in the lower house, and if it did want it to happen, it would introduce its own bill and therefore take the credit.
Yeah, well, there's got to be a few lefties in the ALP who want it.
More than a few. McGowan's ministry was asked about whether they had smoked dope when they introduced laws to legalise medical cannabis a while back. Roger Cook said he dabbled. Elena McTiernan was partial to the odd hash cookie back in the day. WA's first law officer said he used to enjoy the odd smoke, as did the woman in charge of WA's schools. Ministers Mick Murray, Simone McGurk, Peter Tinley and Dave Kelly also said they had some passing experience with mull, as did Labor's golden boy Ben Wyatt, who said he was quite the badass when he was younger. But it doesn't matter what the Cabinet or even the caucus wants.
Why is that?
Well, because dear leader is a narc. Mark McGowan says he has never, ever smoked mull. And unlike when Bill Clinton initially denied it, I believe him. Because Mark McGowan is possibly the biggest nerd I have ever met. He's a pleasant, good-natured, good-humoured nerd, but still a nerd.
Did I do that?
Nerds can still do drugs, you know.
Yes. But there's another thing. McGowan used to wear a uniform. No time for hippies in the military. More importantly, the Premier has seen what happens when a government gets sidetracked by a fringe issue. It's 2 seconds to midnight on World War III. The economy's teetering because of a skills crisis, inflation's out of control, and China's militarising the Pacific. And we're talking about the importance of a reefer.
Legalise it, y'all.
Yeah, McGowan doesn't want the distraction.
No. He was a member of Parliament in 2002. That was the last time we went down the decriminalise cannabis path, and it distracted Jeff Gallop's government for 2 years. Labor burned a lot of political capital so a bunch of stoners could suck down cones without having the man on their backs.
Hold on, Chief. It might be medicinal.
Oh, yeah, medicinal. Without it, I could go even blinder.
And after all that, Colin Barnett reversed the laws and made it illegal again as soon as he was Premier. McGowan won't be drawn into something on the periphery of the mainstream. This guy is the mayor of the sensible centre.
He is not one to stray into the political wilderness.
Unlike, say, Adam Ban, who's just thrown the Greens party under a bus by refusing to stand next to the Australian flag. Unlike United Australia, which is slow clapping itself after getting one Senate spot from a bizarro right-wing election campaign costing $100 million. And unlike the Liberals, who are preparing to play the race card by opposing an Indigenous voice in Parliament. While they all sail on the fringes, the good ship McGowan is steaming through the middle of the political spectrum, knowing that's where all the votes are. Legalise Cannabis knows that it's pissing in the wind on this topic.
The party says it's about having an honest conversation on the topic.
Okay. Let's have an honest conversation then. Sophia Mormont was born in Amsterdam and later studied there. She claims to understand a lot about the medical benefits of smoking dope. She's a naturopath who studied traditional Chinese medicine.
You sound skeptical.
Brian Walker is a real medico. He's a proper doctor who was a convert to the benefits of the bong when he injured himself whilst Japanese sword fighting. Up until a few months ago, Brian was a paid employee of medical marijuana company Creso Pharma. As a member of the West Australian Parliament who was chair of a committee tasked with independently overseeing cannabis use, he was being paid by a company which profits from the consumption of cannabis. He quit because of the media heat and got out just ahead of Creso coming under the same kind of heat after federal authorities raided the broking firm of its chairman. That's enough to make anyone paranoid.
Now I'm scared.
I'm Ben Harvey. For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.